President of the United States tonight proposed something that no president has ever proposed, no nation, no industrial democracy, no nation of any kind has ever had.
In light of what's happening at the moment in Washington, it is almost impossible to believe there was a time in recent memory where men on opposite sides of the political fence not only got along, but managed to work together in making real changes stick. Go figure that one. All right, he's a senior fellow emeritus of governance studies at the Brookings Institution, also author of the new book, The Professor and the President, Daniel Moynihan in the Nixon White House. Let's welcome Stephen Hess to MidPoint. Stephen, thank you so much for being here today.
Pleasure.
Is it fair to say that this was simply just a wonderful case of political necessity for both men getting together?
Yes, I think that's fair to say. Each had a reason for the other. For Daniel Patrick Moynihan, who had really been exiled by his own party, the Democratic Party, because he wrote the Negro Family Report, and the Lyndon Johnson people wanted nothing to do with him. He had antagonized a very substantial liberal part of that party. And there was a person who was anxious to be in public life, and his party turned their back. For Richard Nixon, it was a president who had barely gotten elected, who came into office with the Congress entirely in the opposition camp, and he wanted somebody, a prominent Democrat, to be in his administration. Obviously, he'd prefer to have somebody in the cabinet. For one thing, you've got him in the cabinet, you can fire him if it doesn't go well. Instead, he puts Daniel Patrick Moynihan, a liberal, Harvard professor, somebody connected to the Kennedys, the great foes of Richard Nixon, and he puts him right next to him in the White House. This was sort of a dangerous maneuver. It could have backfired if they didn't get on. But the truth of the matter is, they turned out to like each other a lot, and together produced some very interesting legislation.
All right, let's dig into that a couple minutes that we have here then. What was the one piece of legislation that Moynihan and Nixon actually got done that nobody really expected, that really to this day you'd go, wow, they did that?
Well, they got through a lot of little things that people didn't even notice, such as, for example, all statistical reports in the United States were white and non-white. They changed that at that time to white and Negro. Later that was changed to black. So there were a lot of little things like that they did. But the major thing was a speech that the president finally gave in August 1969, in which he said, welfare has failed. I'm going to throw it out and put in a new welfare system called the Family Assistance Plan. Strangely enough, for a Republican, a conservative president, he said this is going to cost us more money. And that went through the House of Representatives. Unfortunately, for Richard Nixon, it failed by one vote in the Senate Finance Committee.
Stephen, is it fair to say that in today's political environment, the sort of relationship that Daniel Patrick Moynihan and Richard Nixon have simply would never exist?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. For one thing, one can't read into the future. And put it another way, in 1969, I never thought it would work in the first place. So why would I think it would work in 2014? So that's the best I can do. It didn't look like it was going to work then, but somehow what happened was that Moynihan started to write these memos to the president-elect, and they were long, they were complicated, they were convoluted, the sort of things that presidents never received. What he was doing was he writing Nixon, not boss to employee or anything like that, but intellectual to intellectual. And Nixon had never been addressed that way before, and he absolutely loved it. And before long, he was asking his advisor, hey, what book should I read? He said, oh, read this book about Disraeli, read this book about Melbourne. So it became a very close relationship. But could I have predicted it then? No, I really couldn't. So that's the best I can do for you.
It's a fascinating book. Daniel Patrick Moynihan was a guy, and I remember this quote, he was baptized a Catholic but born a Democrat, and he and Richard Nixon got along and got a lot done. The book, once again, is The Professor and the President, Daniel Moynihan in the Nixon White House. Maybe the folks who are in the White House right now might take a little lesson from what those two guys did to get things done. Stephen Hess, thank you so much. Fascinating book.
Thank you so much, too.
All right, when we continue right here on MidPoint, it's a time to hear from Michael Steele, the head of the Republican National Committee, former head, I should say, as he talks about race relations in America. It's right here next.